All right, everybody. I'm sitting here with Bryan Duffy from Transition Electric Co. out of Greenville, South Carolina. Bryan, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Doug.
Yeah, man. Thanks for being on. Really excited that you reached out. So tell us a little bit about yourself, getting moving, who you are, kind of how you found yourself in the electrical trade.
Well, I'm 38 years old as of last month.
Right on. Happy birthday.
I came into the electrical trade by accident. It was my brother, who's not an electrician anymore, for a job anyway. He's a firefighter and a very accomplished firefighter and trainer.
Okay.
But I had pursued the arts a lot, and that was like my main focus. I was never like a physical tool kid. Maybe make a ramp or something for a bike or a skateboard, but not, But anyway, I tell everybody the same thing. I became an electrician for a girl who is my wife.
Okay, right on. So it worked. It worked out.
Yeah, exactly. I was in arts, and my brother was in the trades class, and I had pursued video editing, and his class shared a door with mine.
Okay.
And it was frustrating because he was even just in class able to go and make some money on the weekends doing electrical work.
Mm-hmm.
And I had no money. So he was able to take his girlfriend out, and I wasn't.
Right on.
So I was like, I should try this. And I don't know what happened. I got in there. They were working on wiring boards.
Okay.
And they just had little schematics set up and working on things. And I just remember they were phasing wires with big fat markers.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought it looked so cool. And they were spending all this time braiding the wire. And I was like, I think I can do that. And I dropped it, dropped the art class. And I knew I wasn't going to make it through the class because I wasn't a good student. But my teacher was like, I said to him, I need a job. I'm here for a job.
Okay.
And he was like, I know somebody. And he just gave me he put in a good word for me at the biggest electrical company in Tampa, Florida.
Okay.
Residential. And I just went and worked for him. He's like, you've got it. You don't need to stay.
Okay.
And I just went and I got hazed so hard.
I'm sure you did. It was was it like a big commercial industrial company?
It was a residential company.
Right on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
How many employees total, roughly?
Well, just to give you an idea, that company had their own gas tank, their own warehouse. I want to say when I got hired there, they had 35 to 40 technicians. Okay. It was all rough-in, trim-out, and it was so systematic that they had rough-in crews that arrived at a certain time and trim-out crews that arrived at a certain time.
Okay.
Yeah, it was very, methodical. It was thought out.
Where did you start? Did you start on the rough-in side?
Yes, yeah. And to this day, I hate trim-out.
So when you say you got hazed, what were some of the experiences that you had, and then how did those experiences lead to you becoming a leader and how you treat people?
Okay, that's a great question. So I was, like I said, I was born in I didn't tell you this. I was born in New Jersey, and we spent a lot of time there. And my mom was really big on making us, not making us be creative, but finding ways to be creative with the small town we lived in.
Sure.
So I was always drawing or painting or writing and, making videos with a VHS camera or something. I was always doing some kind of visual or mentally stimulating thing.
Okay.
And so that my dad wasn't very handy, and my mom had a lot of physical labor she could do, but she also didn't have a whole lot of tool experience.
Right.
So I guess the hazing just came from being appearing to be so weak, and yeah, I mean, for real. I mean,
sure. Yeah,
I'm
sure.
not a big guy. I'm small.
Right.
And not tall. I don't have I'm pretty lean.
Yeah.
And I was just working with a bunch of good old boys in the middle of Land O'Lakes, Florida.
Yeah.
Tampa Bay during the construction boom of the early 2000s. And I can tell you real quick, this is the grossest thing ever.
Okay.
As far as an apprentice goes,
Okay. Mm-hmm.
they had a dip can, they would spit into their Mountain Dew can.
Of course.
And they would leave it in the truck,
Mm-hmm.
I just couldn't stand the smell when I woke up and got in the truck, couldn't handle it. And there's one crew I was working with, they disliked me so much that, and I mean it that they disliked me because they vocalized how much they disliked me.
Right. They literally said,
"Yeah, we don't like you."
Oh man.
They're like, "You're pulling all the home runs." I'm like,
Okay.
"Yeah, okay, fine." And they would just spit all over the floor and all over the wire. And you know how when you're pulling home runs, you end up with like a bundle.
That's brutal.
I just have a bundle of wire and just their dip spit all over me.
Damn, dude.
Yeah. There were so many other things, some physical things that happened, but
damn.
So that translates into me I was told I'll never make it as an electrician. You're not worth it. Like, you're wasting our time. You're wasting your time. And that went on for years. And there was crippling, for sure. But I was also like, I want to be a provider and I want to be a husband and I want to be able to take care of my family. So I'm doing this.
Right.
And I quit it a few times, but the long and short of it is to not take up too much space in the room with talking about it is just that the key takeaway I did take from that and when I went into leadership was that that isn't how people learn. It was a very old school way of teaching, and I've never taught an apprentice or ran a crew that way. Yeah. I set very clear expectations and identify where the inefficiencies may be. Right. And we'll make suggestions like, okay, so this isn't working for you because you're not really actually focused on this, or this isn't working for you because your tools aren't on your hip, they're on the ground, or whatever. Sure.
So you mean that works better than just spitting dip all over somebody? That's absurd. I don't believe you.
Or throwing your tools across the room. But I'll give you a story when you're ready for it about the one time that karma came back on that guy, and it was my doing.
I'm ready for it. I'm ready for it whenever you are, man. That sounds great.
He had there was a guy I ended up working with who he was ex-military and was very much and no disrespect to the military, but very much just in his regiment still, like he was still on base,
no doubt,
every morning. Mm-hmm. He just was so aggressive and, down talked me every single day. And one day we were up on top, I had taken it upon myself to read the code and get familiarized with the code. Mm-hmm. And he thought it was a good idea to mess with me one day while I was cutting in the smoke detectors. Okay. And I had exactly 6 inches in and out of the box. Mm-hmm. And he said, it's too short. And I said, it's not too short. And he goes, are you you're correcting me? I said, actually, article, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, right. And he grabbed me by my tool belt off the top of this ladder, pulled me down, from the top of the ladder, pulled me down. My tools, what were on my hip, ended up on the ground, and whatever didn't was up, jammed up into my back and stuff. And I'm really upset about it. Of course. He grabs what he can off the floor of my tools and throws them across the house and then spits on me. Wow. Don't ever correct me, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. So I was like, all right, you're never going to touch me again. That's the last time you ever do that. Right. And he was like, yeah, whatever. So I waited for the right moment. Christmas came around. And
Christmas ends up being a Christmas story, a Christmas revenge story. I love it.
Christmas comes around, and his girlfriend or his wife, I don't remember what, but had bought him a brand new rigid set. Okay. And he would say to put everything for the service would go in this rigid bag. So like when we're mounting the panel in the garage and stuff like that, like the no locks is in there, screws are in there, the drill's in there. Everything you would need to frame out a garage panel is in there. And I told him, I was like, that's the worst spot for you to put that no locks. He's like, no, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. I've done it with all my service bags. It'll be fine. I was like, yeah, I just got a feeling that one day it's not going to be fine.
Yeah.
He didn't listen to me. So I took that no locks and I left the lid off.
There you go.
I literally threw it in that bag.
Wow.
With brand new tools.
Wow.
Zipped it. It's like the meanest thing I've ever done to somebody. I stomped all over.
Oy.
All over it.
Yeah.
The no locks was all over everything.
Oh.
Threw it in the back of the truck. Next time he needed to do the service, he asked me to get the service bag out. I did. I was like, man, I don't feel good. I gotta go use the restroom. Can you get the service started and I'll pick up? I just waited. And I heard him unzip that bag and wow! So
Oh my God!
I came out and I was like, what happened? He goes, you know exactly what happened.
Did he suspect that you did that?
Oh yeah, but I was
Okay,
like,
okay, right
I was
on.
like, I don't know what to tell you, man. I was like, I told you. I cranked that thing down too. I was like, I don't know how it happened.
So that's an interesting story because, like, it just goes to show that when you don't, if you decide for some reason that to be cruel to somebody, that you're supposed to be leading.
Yeah, right.
Then it puts somebody who normally is a kind-hearted person who's just trying to go about their life in a position where they're looking for ways to respond to. It's just bananas to me. And I, being a former military guy myself, I saw so much of that too. And even in the military, like I was a leader pretty early on in the military, but it wasn't because I was, trying to put people down. It was because I was trying to pull people with me. But I did see that.
Right.
We had this sergeant who, he was a staff sergeant at the time, just came from the drill field. So he was like, had just gotten done being a Marine Corps drill instructor for a couple of years, right? So like every morning when this dude wakes up, let me tell you, for those of you who don't know about the Marine Corps, like, when you're in Marine Corps boot camp, there are these little guidelines that you have to follow, and any of my Marines out there know what I'm talking about. Like if you're in, say, the chow hall, getting ready for some food, and a drill instructor walks down the hallway that you are standing in, what you're supposed to do is throw your body against the wall and yell, "Gangway drill instructor." So as these dudes walk down the hall, it's just person after person, "Gangway drill instructor, gangway," and they're just jacking off the whole. You know what I mean? It just gets them into it. And so we had this dude who just came from the drill field, and he couldn't get his mind out of it. Like he could, like you're saying, even though where I was stationed at the Marine Barracks in Washington, D.C., and it was pretty spit and polish. But even there, it was like, man, hey, we're all non-commit, we're all NCOs too. We're all like, I got a whole platoon I'm looking after. Like, don't talk to me like that. And he couldn't help himself. And I felt like every time I ran into this guy, or every time I saw him, I was doing something I shouldn't do. Like there was this one day where I was just trying to be funny. I'm just trying to like make my friend laugh. So I'm in one of the offices and I'm putting Scotch tape on my face like Pee Wee Herman used to, where he would like put his nose up and I'm trying to make my friend laugh, and then I look on the look on his face said it all. And I look over at the doorway and that staff sergeant's just standing there staring at me and gives me the kind of like, come here, and decides to chew my ass. Anyway.
And he held it together while you had tape on.
I took it off immediately. But the point is, like, you don't have to be that way. You don't have, like, in fact, the way that you said it, that's not the way people learn.
No.
And it's just an old school behavior that somebody's dad did back during the Depression era when there was no therapy and there was no Zoloft.
Yeah.
And all there was whiskey and violence, and that was how you got it all out. And that's why you had kids, so that those little motherfuckers could, you know what I'm saying? So like in that, it's just like when you're in a house from like the 60s and you go to try to solve some wiring problem, some switching issue, and there's like a switched neutral, and you're like, how did this happen in the 60s? But what you got to remember is the person who taught that person who did the wiring in the 60s probably learned how to do wiring in the 30s.
Yeah.
And so those things just carry on, right?
Yeah.
Until somebody steps forward and says, okay, that's not how we do this anymore.
Yeah.
So,
so there's been so many times. I mean, this was a thread in my career. And to be clear, I quit electrical like 3 or 4 times. I tried not being an electrician. I was like, I'm going to go. But the the problem is once I got a taste of it, I was like, I can't not do it. But, you know, I was like, I'm going to go back to college, or I'm going to go work at a call center because it's air conditioned. And then was like, I can't stand working in air conditioning. This sucks, you know, whatever. But throughout all that time, I started finding that, you know, throughout just working, period, every space had that person or people who were like stuck in high school, you know, that really felt like they were more important than someone else and needed you to like submit to that.
Yeah.
And though I will say the thing that I think helped me through a lot of this was I found like punk music pretty early in my life, and just that whole mentality of like do you and not worry about other people. I just always found myself getting into conversations with people, not like, why are you being so mean to me? Not that kind of conversation, but more of a like, doesn't this get boring for you? Like, that happened to me with a crew in North Carolina once. I mean, I was working with them, and it was like 3 months of nonstop, like, you know, questioning my sexuality or whatever, you know? It was just like every day. Yeah. And I was like, at what point does this like get old for you? Like you wake up like wanting to do this, like do you realize how much time we're wasting here? Like we could just be getting along and instead you want to spend this time doing this. It's just a waste of energy. And if you don't react to the energy, it does one or two things. Either it dissipates or it enhances.
Amplifies, right. Mm-hmm.
And I have found that as I've gotten older, I have a way of letting people know I'm serious to where it dissipates. Yeah. But when I was younger, it definitely didn't dissipate because I was like wisecracking, so it would amplify. Yeah,
well, you were standing up for yourself in the ways that you understood how to.
At that time,
yeah. And that's all right. I mean, it's a learning lesson all the way around, and I love what you said. It is a waste of time. Anybody listening, if you are first of all, I think the people out there that are abusing and bullying people probably aren't listening to this show, or if they are, they're punching the dashboard right now, wishing it was our faces. But
this is the problem.
If you're out there and that's your mentality, man, you're wasting. I think that obviously through this platform, everybody can see life is short.
Yeah.
Wake up, be in love with what you're doing. Put every bit of positive energy into it you can, and everything else can go fishing. I don't care.
Yeah.
And that was a big part of why we started our company, too, because it's like I didn't get into the trades till I was 35. I've mentioned that before, but a large part of it was because I'm from blue-collar people, and I grew up around them, and so it didn't seem like the right fit right away because I had a lot of people in my life as growing up too, and just teasing or whatever, but I got bullied a lot too about people being like, you're just not like us, you're just different than us.
Right.
So I never felt like that would be my place. I wound up in the military largely due to some sort of like compensation to that. I think I wanted to be able to prove that I was strong enough to like, even though I might be different or whatever, I want to prove to these people like, you can't push me around. Like I might be different than you, but I'm strong too.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of, and I felt like I didn't belong. And then through the military, even feeling like at the end of my time in the military, knowing that wasn't my future.
Yeah.
I still felt that, like, I don't know if I could get into the trades because of what you just explained. Like, it's especially as an older man, like a 35-year-old, there's no way I'm going to a company and somebody's going to do that to me without it. We're fighting day one. We're duking day one. Like I just won't. I won't do that. And so it's easy for people to prey on younger, especially smaller people who are kind and soft spoken. You get targeted and singled out.
Well, I will just say this. I'll take this opportunity to say it for the podcast. And, I believe that we have a huge, we've had in the electrical industry, to which I've almost been a part of now, almost 20 years.
Okay.
From when I started, I was told there's not enough of you. And one day you're going to be able to just name your price because people don't want to do it. Out of all the trades, people want to do this one. It takes longer to get into a service truck. If you're in the service industry, it takes way longer to get into it and be trusted with the calls. Yeah. Blah, 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 blah. We just don't have even the resources to waste. I have a hard enough time finding people that want to do this work. Right. And I love my apprentice. He's a friend and he's an apprentice. But even sometimes with him, I feel like, okay, I'm going to take a moment to help you see what's happening right now. Right. Because yes, you could go work at this restaurant and make this much money. But the long view is that ends, this continues. Yeah. Just being able to communicate that to a young person right now is difficult, let alone finding the person that will listen. Yeah. So if you've got them in your truck, and then you're gonna
beat the hell out
or do whatever, man, you are taking a valuable resource, and people are a valuable resource. Period. But specifically right now with what we do, that is extremely hard to get.
Yeah. Well, you're right, but it's a fine balance too. So and we're definitely picking apart this old school mentality, but I don't want to overstep it and say that this is a tough industry. This is a hard job. The work is really hard. So you can't come in and have real soft hands and keep real soft hands real long. But that doesn't mean that on the emotional side you need to beat the shit out of people. And you're right. That's not how people learn, and that's definitely not how people of this generation learn.
No, I think too. We just take you take a person who's, it doesn't matter if they're young or 35 getting into the trade. You take that person and if you have leadership in place, I mean, that leader should be able to identify that person's listening language, the language they hear properly.
How they learn.
Yeah, exactly. And then be able to, what's the best way of saying it? Just be able to take that person and take them to the side when things are not going the way they should, and use a tone that is direct, okay, but not insulting.
Yeah, right.
It's this isn't working because you've had 4 Gatorades since 7 o'clock, which means you probably were drinking last night, right. And hungover.
Yeah.
I don't want to have that conversation again.
Totally, man. Yeah.
Stuff like that,
For sure. Yep. But that does, as opposed to the other way around where you're just belittling somebody.
Yeah.
For the sake of your own ego.
Yeah, right.
Bummer.
Yeah,
So I wanted to, and I mentioned this a little bit beforehand, but I wanted to tell you a little story about, because we're talking about teachers, and we're talking about people reaching across and knowing how you listen. Because I want to tell this story about this experience I had, and I want to ask you about experiences in your life. Because we all have these skills that sometimes we don't even know. We don't even see it in ourselves, or we don't believe that we have what it takes to be especially when it comes to the skilled trades. You might be a nerdy, soft-spoken kid that's feels like I couldn't do that. But sometimes it takes somebody else to say, actually, you're very analytical. You're a great problem solver. You're skinny, so you fit in all kinds of little holes. I waited until you drank to do that. And sometimes it takes a person reaching across and saying, actually, you should give it a shot. So my story is, I'm in high school, and I think I was a senior. I think it was my senior year. And I was trying to be, I was always the funny guy. Everybody, that was what I was, I was the funny guy. But I was trying to prove myself as this strong guy too, because we were just talking about, I felt I I wanted to be taken seriously as a young man too. I didn't want to. There was an insecurity in me where if I could have just embraced that more, I think I would have come out the gate a little stronger in regards to following certain dreams or whatever. I think I spent a lot of time in my early 20s trying to figure out things that I think other people saw pretty readily. It took me a while. Yeah.
Likewise, yeah.
Yeah. It just took a while to be like, okay, actually, I'm real good at this. I should just listen to myself. Everybody around me can shut the fuck up. And I need to just know who I am, and that's important.
Yeah.
So there was this teacher named Mr. Christensen, and he was my ceramics teacher, because, yes, I took ceramics because I was a straight-up dum-dum in high school. I just wasn't – if I went to high school now, I'd kill that shit. I just wasn't into it. It's like I just didn't get, like you were saying, like, what are we – I've said it before on the show. Like, what are we doing? What are you talking about? Like, you start day one in a semester, you sit down, and they just start drawing shit on the book. You're like, what are we talking about?
Yeah.
There's a lot of that in school. So I ended up with the ceramics class, and I sat right next to Mr. Christensen's desk, and we had these tables where there were multiple people at the table, and one of my best friends, my friend Chris, was sitting at the table with me, and it was a nightmare because all we did was make jokes. We just would laugh. I mean, it's ceramics. All you're doing is making a bong anyway, right? Yeah. So we would just sit there and laugh all day, and Mr. Christensen, of all people, got the biggest kick out of it. Like, he laughed with us. He was like, he loved that class period because it was just nonstop. And so there was this play coming up with the drama department, and every day in the hallway when he would see me, he would say, "Are you auditioning for that play?" And I was like, "No, man, I have no interest. I don't know if you can tell this about me, but I'm tough, man. I play football now. Like, I'm in the weight room. I don't know. I think you might think I'm somebody that I'm not." Because I didn't see it. But every day I'd go back to his class and he'd be cracking up, and every day he'd see me in the hallway. "Hey, those auditions are coming up. You gonna go? You should go audition." "No, man. No, that is not for me. I'm tougher than that." And so one day I'm sitting in class and the auditions are like that week. And Mr. Christensen gets up and he walks to the door of the classroom and he goes, "Hey, Doug, come here." So I'm like, "All right, okay." And I get up, and by the time I get out in the hallway, he's already walking down the hallway. And I'm like, "Where are you going?" He's like, "Come on." And so I'm like, okay. So I'm like walking to catch up with him, but he's keeping pace in front of me. Turns the corner, walks down the hall, and walks right into a room where a teacher is actively teaching. It's the acting teacher, Miss Wood. And he walks right in front of everybody with me behind him, right up to her who's teaching the class. And he goes, "Miss Wood, I'd like to introduce you to Doug Powell. He's going to be auditioning for your play this week. You're going to love him. He's hilarious. He's going to do great." And so I was like, well, it looks like I'm auditioning for this play because now I can't. Okay. And so I went and I auditioned, and I got a part. And it was my first time auditioning. And it was wild because obviously anybody who watches me now is like, well, clearly that's where you belong, is some form of performance art. And that's where my life went. But it wasn't until I did that, and he stuck his neck out for me and reached across and pulled me through to see who I really am. He's like, "Look, man, it's cool that you can be a tough kid. It's cool that you like sports. It's cool that you want to do that. But, like, that doesn't mean that you should ignore this thing about you that everybody knows and sees. Yeah. You need to be familiar with that part of yourself, too, because that's actually where your true strength lies. Is, go be physical. Go do whatever you need to do to prove to yourself. Join the Marine Corps, whatever. Yeah. But you're going to understand after a while that there's no escaping who you really are.
Right.
And sometimes it takes us, when you become a leader, when you get in a leadership role, you're going to see people like that. You're going to see people who like just don't see it yet.
Yeah.
They don't get it yet, and it's our job to stick our neck out and walk out in the hallway and say, "Hey, come with me."
Yeah.
Yeah. And that guy, I mean, it's a story that I just told my daughter is 6 now, and so she wants me to tell her stories at bedtime about my life, and that one came up recently. Mm-hmm. And it really dawned on me. I was like, man, that changed my life.
That's so cool. I'm glad you shared that.
It was amazing.
we're dealing with that. I mean, I'm kind of just had this conversation with the guy that his last day was Friday with our company, but you know, in regards to my apprentice, he has been telling me since day one, like he doesn't got it. It's not him. He doesn't have it. And I'm like, well, I see it. I don't see it. You don't see what I see on a daily basis. And I was like, I'm not talking about at work.
Yeah.
There's something else there.
Right.
And it's a similar story. I know for a fact that this person has been told throughout their life that they can't do this and they can't do that and they're not good at this and they're not good at that. But I can see he has a fine attention to detail. He has a fine consideration towards what he's touching and how he's doing it. Yeah. So I have similar story with school, and it happened multiple times for me. First of all, I was never a good student just in the sense of like the term good student, because, and I understand this now as an adult, but when I was younger, I didn't understand it. I just wasn't learning because I didn't understand how to learn.
Right.
Like, I know that's kind of crazy to say. Sometimes people don't understand what I mean by that, but I just didn't, like, for me, I had to understand like the deeper concept to do the work.
Totally.
And everyone else was just like, oh, there's the instructions on how to do this math problem. Like, we just do this, then we do this, then we do this. But I was like, but why?
Why? Exactly. Why? Exactly.
I can do it. I'm just asking you why.
Like, what does this equate to? What are we doing with this information? Yeah.
So we had a pretty difficult childhood, and we had a difficult family life growing up, and we missed a lot of school.
Okay.
Just for whatever reasons, we were not present. I think one year I missed like 80-something days.
Wow.
And I think like my English teacher, this is one that stands out to me in high school. His name was Mr. Pearson. I really resonated with him well because there was something special about him in the sense that he was going to be a pro soccer player. He lived in Europe. He was going to be a pro soccer player. He was on his way and like right there. And he might have even played pro games for a short period of time and had an injury end it. And he was super prickly. He was like me, though. He was smaller in stature, very like lean, but and kind of sarcastic. And you could tell like he was interested in talking to students, but he was interested in talking to a certain kind of student.
Right.
He talked to all the students, but there were specific ones that he would give more attention to. And I happened to be one of those students.
Okay.
When I was there. And he pulled me to the side and he said, listen, I know you like English. When you're here, you do well. And I've talked to all the teachers, like, your whole trajectory for school has always been a solid English, and you're failing my class. And I don't understand. And I just told him, I was like, I want to be a videographer. I like writing, but I want to be a videographer. I want to film skateboarding, whatever. And he pulled me to the side after a little while, and he goes, well, to get there, you have to pass school.
Right.
So he's like, I don't care how you pass my class, but you're going to pass it. So here's the rules for you. I want a short story every Friday. I don't care what classes you're missing. I don't care what you're getting on your tests. We're going to scale these stories to be at this percentage of your grade, and you're going to turn them in. But the minute you don't turn them in, I'm failing you. So I just cranked out short story after short story after short story after short story. And that's where he was like, that's where it came. He planted the seed that like, okay, so you clearly have an issue just learning based off of structure because you were able to accomplish this task because you resonate with this style of art. You should become a writer. The trajectory went this way.
Yeah. Sure.
And then there was other people like that, when I went to college. But here's the thing that got me to be an electrician and like accept it, that this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad it happened. When I went back to film school, when I went to film school, I had a lighting teacher pull me to the side and ask me to go to his house in the middle of the woods to wire up some grow lights.
Okay.
Which I didn't do.
Okay.
But he asked me to. But then he did pull me to the side and tell me, hey, I just want you to know that, like, you're asking way too many questions about this class, which indicates to me that you actually want to do this.
Okay.
Like, you're not just here with some romantic notion that you're going to become a filmmaker or something. Like, you're asking questions in case you have to do lighting.
Right.
And I was like, right. He's like, you need to leave. You need to drop out. And
Whoa.
I was like, I don't understand. Like, why would I do that? And he said, this school is going to take all of your money and you're never going to get a job.
Okay.
I was like, okay. He said, stick with electrical. And if you want to get into filmmaking, use your electrical career to get onto the floor. He said, you understand lighting calculations. I mean, you already know that.
Yeah.
Okay. So I dropped film school.
Wow.
Then I was writing in my spare time, while I was doing electrical. And my first son, my wife and I were both in college, and she got pregnant with our first son. She left, and I stayed. And I was in a poetry creative writing class, and I became very close to that professor. And he pulled me under his wing and made me the assistant editor of his journal. And he did the same thing. He's like, so what are you here for? I was like, I think I'm just going to teach. I like writing. I've been told since I was young, going back to Mr. Pearson, that I should write. Mm-hmm. And I like teaching writing, so I would love to teach on a college level. And he laid it out flat. He was just like, no.
Nah, dog.
He's like, why are you going to do that? He said, you make great money as an electrician. You have a family to support.
Yeah.
You have a child on the way.
Yeah.
This is the worst. He's like, you're going to end up... He painted a really grim picture. He said, you're going to end up staying in college and becoming an adjunct. To do that, you're going to have to go anywhere you're asked to go in the country.
Right.
He said, you don't have the cutthroat mentality that you need to take that adjunct position from someone else.
Right.
He said, it takes some, dirty things because everybody wants that job.
Interesting.
So it's this weird networking thing that has to happen, and then you got to throw your colleagues under the bus so that you can get the job. And he's just like, you're just not going to do that. And it's like, no, I wouldn't do that. He said, and I don't think you can deal with the politics of college. I don't think you can deal with the staff.
No way.
The actual other professors and their, how pompous they can be.
Yeah.
And I was just crushed. He's like, but you can stay the editor of the journal if you want.
Yeah, that's great. Well,
teachers, but all those teachers did the same thing. They kind of reeled me back in.
Yeah.
And I think I would say I am so thankful that every single one of them. There's many teachers that have reeled me back in because I wasn't an easy student.
Yeah.
I excelled when the template was given to me in a different way.
But that's the key. That's like the makeup of just about every artistic person I know. My children included, just trying to help them through school and help them understand the why of it too.
Yeah,
can be tricky. My oldest daughter is very creatively gifted, and she's in school for biology, studying biology in college. And it's interesting because the creative side of things always just comes so naturally to her. Mm-hmm. And the academic side is challenging because of the kind of the rigidness of it all.
Right.
Yeah. And you've got to know how to, like you said, you've got to know somebody's listening language if you're going to teach them. And it's definitely not a one-size-fits-all model as far as being a leader and a teacher. Everybody's different.
I think teaching philosophy in college is a mistake. I think it should be taught and introduced without judgment and without grading.
Okay.
Actually,
yeah, I
think philosophy should be introduced in the early years of school.
Sure. Yeah.
Because for me, that's when my whole world opened up. Was when I was an adult and was like, I'm going to buy some philosophy books.
Yeah.
Or 18, I'm going to buy some philosophy books.
Correct,
I'm interested in whatever this person has to say.
Yeah.
then it changes your perception, or it can help you entertain another perception for a little while.
Right.
And then it's like, oh, it like tickles the brain a little bit to start thinking about the world differently.
It does. Yep.
So that, all of a sudden certain things make sense to you that never made sense before.
100%.
But we're waiting till like people are
young adults and then grading them on it.
22 and saying, "Oh, you don't understand, Taoism or whatever." You got to go.
Yeah, if you're doing, I remember doing I took philosophy in college, and I remember thinking the same thing. It's like, this is great. I mean, sure, Plato's Cave, rock and roll, I get it.
Yeah.
But and then what? I get it, but I agree with you. It's bigger picture. Philosophy should be a continued conversation your entire life.
Well, if you read Allegory of the Cave when you were say if a young person reads Allegory of the Cave, but maybe it's a watered down version, so the language is a little bit easier to read.
Cool idea. Kids, children's philosophy books. That's a great idea.
Say you read that at 8 years old or 9 years old.
Yeah.
And then you see Star Wars for the first time, or something. Your understanding of that story is completely changed because you've been introduced. But see, if you're raised in just this one way, this one worldview, nobody's saying that you have to change your worldview. It's just to enter the room of a different worldview for a short period of time.
Right.
I mean, I can't imagine what kind of leaders we would have in all industries if you had somebody that could just come in and be like, "Oh yeah, I understand where that dude's coming from. He's living that story of Darth Vader." He's living that story, and then entertain that idea for a minute and go, "Okay, well, just watering it down using Star Wars or something." Be like, "Oh well, I can change him by, showing him some of the softer stuff or whatever." Right. I don't know. Anyway.
No, I agree with you, and I think that says a lot because most of us are raised with a solid worldview because our parents. Whether you're raised in a Christian household or a Muslim household or a Jewish household, you're raised with this static worldview that's this is the world. This is how we see it through the eyes of our culture. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's how most of us are raised.
Right, yeah.
But I agree that introducing new philosophical ideas shouldn't be some sort of antithesis to that, but it should enhance. If you're gonna stick with your worldview, it should be because you've compared it to alternatives and you've made a decision for yourself that no, actually this works better for me.
It'll strengthen the foundation of your worldview,
or it'll flip it upside down, and that's good too.
Or shatter it.
and I think that most of us get to that point where we're starting to look for how does this person make sense of it? I remember when, and I'm sure I've talked about this on the show before too. When I lived in Baltimore, my wife and I lived there. The Jehovah's Witnesses would come around. And they were real strong in that neighborhood. So I was working from home at the time for a digital media company. And first time I get a knock on the door and I look out, I'm like, oh, snap, it's Jehovah's Witnesses. Right on, let's go talk. Because I love talking to people. If you're going to knock on my door with the answer, I want to talk. I'm interested. So, and I always like to I found these little ways to make suggestions to my Jehovah's Witness friends who would come probably every month.
Yeah.
I'd always invite them to sit on the porch. They would always ask me if they could give me some literature.
Yeah.
And I always said, absolutely. As long as you let me give you some literature too. And they would never do it. Never do it. So it's just wild.
You want to know how I know?
Yeah.
At probably 8 years old, I would have been that kid knocking on your door because I was raised that way.
You raised Jehovah's Witness?
I'm not practicing as of 16. But when I was raised in that, and you're exactly right. There's this, you don't need anything else because you have everything.
You have answers, right? Well,
right.
I had this one, and I may have said it on the show before, and if so, I apologize. But the first time I encountered this crew, I was real stoked to talk with them. And it was a young woman and her little daughter. And then there was an older woman with her, and they were kind of going door to door. And so I open up the door and say, hey, what's up? And they say, she said, hi, I'm such and such, is such and such. And she goes right into it. She's like, do you think that a person's belief in God makes them happier?
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I think so. I think that having any sort of like structure to put on top of these unanswerable questions that nobody really understands or knows, I think having answers would really make you feel comfortable and satiated. Like you, and I'm not kidding. She stops for a second and thinks and goes, she goes, huh? I never thought of it that way. But I'm like, you're knocking on my door. You're at my house, and you haven't considered.
Yeah.
Anyway, and so it started from there, and we would sit and hash it out, and I loved it because they would, there would be one person with scripture, and they'd be reading from scripture,
yep.
And then the other person would kind of be citing, and we always had awesome conversations. And for me, I'm not at all out here trying to change anybody's life or disprove anything. I just want to have the conversation about, like you said, it's one thing to be raised in a worldview.
Yep.
But alternative perspectives shouldn't dismantle the worldview.
Nope.
They should enhance your devotion to your ideals, because if your ideals are strong, then they're going to stand the test of any sort of alternative philosophy.
Well, I think it goes that way with we can go back to the trade. I mean, you have people that get into the trade with a limited understanding, okay, of electrical. So I'll use where I started, rough-in electrical. I mean, just rough-in a house. So you're just a wire monkey. You're just pulling wires everywhere is what you would be told. I remember when I got my first service job, I had full faith that I was an electrician. I've wired houses. I'm an electrician.
Yeah.
And when I got my first job with this guy, who is to this day the one electrician I've learned the most from, he's like in his 80s now.
Wow.
Which also, by the way, was somebody who told me multiple times, like, you just don't got it. But in one of the guys that was, I mean, like I said, he's in his 80s, so he was like super hard on me and said some crazy stuff to me sometimes.
Yeah.
And the guy I've quit the most in my career. I probably quit him 3 times. But I always went back to him because I was learning so much.
Yeah.
But you're not an electrician, but you got the job. I was like, what the hell? What is wrong with this guy? But when I started having to, he just throw me in the middle of like, okay, we got a service call and you got to diagnose this. There's something going on at this building. I get there and it's a commercial building and it's 3-phase. I'm like,
whoops.
I don't know what the heck's going on here.
Yep.
Figure it out, But he was absolutely right, in my opinion. Like, there's all these, going back to like worldviews, like, there's all these views in the electrical trade of what an electrician is.
That's right.
And they're all electricians.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to diminish anybody. Mm-hmm. But my personal opinion is you don't fully grasp electrical if you haven't had your hands in residential, commercial, and service.
Yeah, totally.
Industrial is just larger commercial. So,
right.
I mean, I'm not super concerned about that. But residential... all phases of residential, all phases of commercial, and do service. And where the magic happens is I think you get a really good understanding when you get your hands in service.
Yeah, totally.
The guys don't want to touch service. You never really have to test that theory.
Yeah.
You never really have to do load calc. Like, you don't have to figure any of it out.
Sure.
No,
I agree with you. I think troubleshooting is the best. It's like it puts everything that you've learned to the test, for sure, specifically theory, and depending on where you work in the country or the world, your understanding of historic technique, because that's a big part of troubleshooting as well. If you walk into a house that was built in 1915 and you expect to troubleshoot it the same way you would a modern house, you're kidding yourself.
No.
But also, like, in terms of like a worldview, and then adding philosophy to change your perspective and being open to that, that's part of becoming a better electrician. Like,
exactly.
Every person that I've ever worked with, too, has had a different way that they go about the way they wire something. Like working with Josh, my business partner here and co-host, he's great at that. Where it's not just about like, what did somebody tell you? Well, I've been doing it this way my whole life. Josh will look right in your eyes and go, why? Well, show me where does it say that? Well, the code says that. Okay, where? Show me where it says that.
That's the best.
Prove it. Prove that it's not just hearsay. And if you can wrap your mind around those things and not let your ego get involved and be like, well, I'm been doing this longer than you. I don't have to listen to you. It's like, no.
Yeah, right.
What if that person knows something you don't? And what if that could change the entire way you go about? What if that's going to make you that much better?
Yep. I know that I have told many apprentices in my career, don't believe a word I say.
Yeah. That's good.
Well, why? What? It takes them a minute to figure it out. I was like, because what you'll find in this trade, and it could be other trades too, but what you'll find is there's like this thing that happens where like an electrician's taught by a master or somebody else that's had their foot in the door who taught them. Mm-hmm. And this thing that could have been improper or wrong or maybe inefficient has then been passed down, right? So if you view your leader as like he has all the answers,
right.
I mean, you want to respect the leader of your, whatever, but you should be able, like I said, cracking open the head, have that perception conversation. I can explain why a wire spinner in a rough-in works, but I can also explain like how it could potentially create inefficiency.
Yeah, right.
You go into new construction, that's the first thing the guys would do is start building their wire spinners out of 2x4s and wrapping them around the rafters, and it's like finding like framing straps and a nail to like make one.
Yeah. And
I'm like, okay. When I got there, I was like, I understand this is what you guys do on every job, but you spend an hour building these things.
Right. Yeah.
I have half the home runs pulled, just walking them out and pulling them over the trusses. Yeah, but you're working harder. But if we're on piecework and we're getting paid by the house, like either you're going to keep those wire spinners in the truck or go buy a professional one.
Right. Yep.
Or you're going to let me walk them out because I can tell you right now it's inefficient.
Right.
No. This is how we've done
and
it. Everybody's
got their style and everybody's got their take, and that's cool too. Like seeing how everybody goes about doing it. It is interesting that it's the mentality of all of it. It's how we come at all of it collectively. How we encourage one another or try to tear one another down. There is definitely a lot of like dude shit in this trade, in any trade where you're like, if you're doing something, most people are scared to post stuff they do just because people will eat you alive. Like
I don't care.
They'll eat you alive. So you gotta look.
Yeah.
Oh,
I know.
I've
posted videos. I'm like, that panel doesn't look as good as I want it to look. But guess what? I also had 2 other calls to get to that day.
Right.
And I want to be proud of my work, but I save, like, for example, when I'm doing a panel swap out, I ain't trying to get everything in a right angle bend, nice and neat in there. Because no matter what I do, it's not going to look like that.
Okay.
In new construction, however, I want everything to look like a work of art.
Right.
But when I'm doing a swap out,
it's hard.
Those wires have been mangled, twisted, and I'm trying to leverage, not leverage, but I'm trying to balance, like, it's going to work and it's going to work well. All the connections are restripped and everything is landed properly. But, nobody's looking at this.
Right.
Like, ever. Again.
Old construction, old panel swap outs are tricky, especially really old houses. The size of the panel is different, especially if you're dealing with a multitude of fuse boxes. There's just so much that goes into that. And you're right. If you're doing sub panels, that's one thing. You've got everything brand new.
Yep.
It's hard to make an old panel look good, for sure.
I just don't even. I'm like, okay, this is going to cost this much to do, and I want to get it and go.
Yeah,
get on to the next thing.
When did
construction? Different.
Yeah, it is true. When did you feel like you were ready to do your own thing, and what made you decide, like, okay, I'm gonna do this myself?
Well, when I was in Florida, we've lived in Greenville, South Carolina for 8 years, but right before we moved here, I had tried partnering with a guy that I worked with at a new construction company. Learned a lot in a short period of time in the sense of like how to operate a business and how to talk to customers and how not to.
Right on.
We just had completely different worldviews, and it just didn't work.
Sure.
When we moved to South Carolina, it was really like an effort to start working in a state that actually paid an electrician their worth. Because the area in Florida we lived in, it was just like, I was always doing side work just to make ends meet, which is crazy.
Yeah.
As an electrician, you even have to say that.
Yeah.
Or stripping copper to do it. You know, the wages were so low. And I think some of that might have to do with the area we lived in and the amount of like fixed income people there was, or whatever. I don't really know. Or maybe I was just working for the wrong companies. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But I moved here and I immediately got hired to be put in a place of leadership with a pretty big company. That was interesting to go from, you know, just being a guy in Florida to like all of a sudden being the guy in this department. And then I got hired again at another company to take a department that was almost not even an electrical department, you know, and like get them set up for success and scaling. And I did that for about 3 years, and then COVID hit. And when COVID hit, I realized pretty quickly that I was at a point in my career where I needed to stop putting off taking that master's test.
Okay.
It was super inspiring when you posted your video, by the way.
Awesome.
And you were like, I got it. It was so cool. It just popped up on a reel. I don't even think I was really following you or anything.
Awesome. Good.
Sure. But it was cool.
Awesome.
But anyway, we got this. I failed the test like 4 times. It was a huge surprise. I had no idea that I was going to fail it like that.
It's a hard test, man.
Anyway, I got it, and I told my wife, you know, well, I'll just have it, and I'll work for this company, and I'll just do licensed work on the weekends. The owners were fine with that. And then it just became like apparent during COVID. I started a skateboard company during the pandemic, and I was like, well, I can have this be my thing outside of work, and that'll generate some extra revenue and income for our family. And I realized really fast, I've been skating a long time. I should have known there's no real money in that. So I was like, well, just keep it a passion project. And then I couldn't come to a real, like COVID changed, in my opinion, changed the way that company worked.
Yeah.
And not necessarily in a negative way. I just think like the overall morale changed.
Okay.
And I just started seeing that like my window was closing.
Sure.
And I was like, I got no retirement. I got nothing.
Yeah.
I need to take a shot at it. So I went to the owners and gave them as much notice as they wanted, or as much time as they needed. But I said, you know, I'll help you find somebody else to run the department, but I got to take a chance on myself, or I'm never going to, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life.
Totally.
And I might fail at it, and that's okay if I fail at it, but I want to try. I'm going to give it a good year or so.
Yeah.
And that's how that happened. I just did it.
Yeah.
But it took so many years of my people telling me I should do it.
Yeah.
And so many years of me saying I wasn't good enough to do it.
Right.
And I kicked myself. I should have done it forever ago.
Yeah. I mean, look, you don't know until you know. And it's so funny. Like everything we've been talking about today, it's like when you've got to believe in yourself. And that begins with knowing who you are.
Yeah.
And typically, we know who we are right away. When we're little, we know exactly who we are.
Yeah.
It's not until we get into school and we hang out with groups of people and we succeed or fail in certain respects throughout that experience that we start to question our worth or our talents. And then, if you're like us, where you're a creative type, you're a creative type in a world that is not geared toward the way we approach the world. And so you are going to be up against every single person that you meet in your life that you already know telling you that what you're trying to do is not going to happen.
Yeah.
That's what they think. Because I can't tell you, like, a stand-up comedian when I was a kid, and everybody I know that I worked with in stand-up that was in my class, they're doing great. It is possible. It is doable. You just have to, and it's hard, but you have to just not listen to people when it comes to that. Like, don't get me wrong, listen to people. Take their advice, take it into consideration. But when it comes to, if you want to do something, fuck everybody.
Yeah.
Don't listen to anybody, because they're all, I said this in a recent post, it's like they're just worried about you.
Right.
They just love you. They just don't want you living on their couch for too long. They just want to make sure you're not going to be destitute. But they typically took an approach that was a ladder climb. Mm-hmm. And it's not that we don't do that either. It's just that the thing that we're climbing toward is something that maybe they can't visualize.
Yeah.
Or that they don't even understand is a reality. But you see it. I see it. Mm-hmm. I don't need a person to visualize what I can see in order for me to make it happen.
Yeah.
You do need those people to have faith that you're going to figure it out.
Right.
If you want them to remain in your life. Mm-hmm. And so that's the hard part. The tricky part is, as a creative person or somebody who wants to step out and take a leap of faith into your own world of your own creation.
Yeah.
You're going to have a lot of people tell you not to do it because it's risky.
Yeah.
But like you said, what do you just give it a shot. You could fail at it, but okay. So you failed doing what, and every failure, every time you took that master's exam and you didn't pass it, mm-hmm. there is the opportunity to either lie down and not get back up, or to consider what you could have done better, go back to the books, focus like hell on that, mm-hmm. take it on the chin, and go sign back up for that test. Because if you're going to be the type of person who jumps up and does something on your own, you have to be the one that holds yourself to the fire. Yep. You have to be the one that finds the motivation, that looks toward mentors in your life that tell you, yeah, keep going. Because other people won't.
Yeah, well, I found that while working for people, Doug, like that was the thing I found myself always doing, was caring about it so much to the point where like an owner would say like, hey man, like you can chill on it. Like we're going to be okay. Like you don't have to worry about this apprentice being this good, or you don't have to worry about the company's numbers and all this other stuff, which was always like, what? Like I would have these conversations, and then on the flip side, I work for other companies where that's like all they focused on, and you weren't doing it. Even if you were doing a good job, they weren't going to tell you were doing a good job.
Yeah.
I've come to realize, we've been in business 2 years now, that I've come to realize that like this was probably the best thing I could do, because I firmly believe that whatever somebody wants to do, whether it's art or plumbing or electrical, whatever it is, if you approach it from a space of like authenticity, and you genuinely care, and you like care about that person's problem or that company's problem or whatever, you're gonna succeed.
Period.
Because you want it. You have invested so much positive energy and love, or whatever you want to call it, into this thing. So it can't fail.
Agreed.
It only fails when you stop trying.
I agree.
And
you see so many people. You see so many people with the negative mentality of that. That's why it blows my mind when people don't care. It's like if you see you come into a home and you're troubleshooting something, and this was clearly not done by the homeowner but done by an electrician, and it's done poorly. It's like, man, what the fuck? Like you just don't care.
I run into it all the time. I get homeowners that are like, "You're the third electrician that's been here. I can't believe you figured it out." It's like, I can't believe 2 other people didn't figure it out.
Yeah.
And you wonder why, and you know, you kind of start getting a backstory, and a lot of times it goes back to they were charging by the hour, for example. Yeah. So, you know, they were like really interested in just keeping, you know, I've got companies that just want to run that clock, and the customer has no idea how much it's going to cost, and they're looking at their watch, and it's like they didn't get to a resolution because you exceeded the customer's budget. Right. You run into that, or you run into the customers who are like, yeah, he just came in and said it was fixed and left.
And it wasn't
like, he was like, oh, it's tripping arc fault.
Right.
I'll just put a new arc fault breaker in. These things suck. You know, he puts a new arc fault in and leaves. Yeah. And then it trips 30 minutes later, and they don't go back out and warranty it.
Roger. Yeah.
Well, maybe there's a reason why it was tripping.
Guaranteed.
Maybe you should go deeper.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I believe you.
I'm sorry.
I believe you said an expectation.
Yeah.
You know, our model is really based on that. I wanted to get into that real quick. I mean,
Yeah.
I set a flat price for what we do. So
Yeah.
it's like, we've got a diagnostic. It caps out at this number.
That's right.
It includes a minor repair, so like a loose connection, I'm not charging you for that or whatever. But if I got to replace like a breaker or an outlet or whatever, we'll charge you for that.
Yep.
But we bring value we start by bringing value right away by identifying to the customer immediately whether we're in their budget or not.
Yeah. Right. I agree with
The customer's like, yeah, it's going to cost me $200 before you leave my house no matter what. If they're like, I can't afford it, that's okay.
Yeah, totally.
You've done them a favor.
That's
You
right.
set an expectation.
Yep.
They didn't waste money that they didn't have, and you leave.
Yeah.
Or you don't go at all, you know.
I agree. I love that method. And I think that, number one, you're right. It's all about the expectation and leading up front with what they are supposed to expect. And more than anything, man, it's you nailed it. It's caring. It's caring whether or not, because I told a client recently, I showed up to do a project at his house, and he wanted to kind of change some of the materials. There were floor outlets that they wanted in a different color and a few things. And he felt bad because we had to kind of go back to the drawing board and reschedule him. And he's like, man, I feel bad I wasted your time. I go, don't ever feel bad about that, because this isn't a one and done. I'm not here trying to get your money today and never see you again. We want it to where every time you look at this install, you feel like you did exactly what you wanted to. You got exactly what you were looking for. And it's the same thing with troubleshooting. We give people a 45-minute time frame. We say, here's our first hour's rate. We typically find the issue in an hour, 45 minutes. By 45 minutes, we're going to come have a conversation with you.
Yep.
And in that little debrief, we say, here's what we're seeing. Here's what this looks like based on the age of the house. Here's what we think. And we either can fix it within the next this amount of time, or we think that the best way to repair this is to do X, Y, Z. And we can give you a price for that. So it's all about just leading with communication, so that there's no surprises on the client's end where they're like, well, I didn't know it was going to cost me $500. It's just an outlet. And it's like, if you help them understand throughout the process why you had to do what you had to do, they're much more reasonable. And then you've made yourself a client for the rest of your career.
Well, we're coming up on the time of year where a lot of companies that are service-based, I don't know about your area, but I'll talk about my area. They're making a lot of money by resetting GFIs. Yeah. We're approaching that Christmas light season or Halloween decoration season.
Yep.
I cannot tell you how much value I've brought to a customer, and I know people listening to this are going to be so mad. Sorry, guys. I will tell a customer on the phone, hey, I want to do you a favor. Let me walk you through this real quick.
Yeah.
You said your garage lights aren't working, the outdoor outlets aren't working, and your Christmas lights aren't working. Can you go in the garage and look for a receptacle that has a button on it?
That's right.
Okay, try and reset that.
Yeah.
Okay.
All good?
Boom, all good.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And then what happens is, no matter what, after Christmas goes away, I almost always hear back from that customer.
Of course.
Hey, we got some Christmas money, we bought some lights, we'd like to call you to hang them.
Yeah.
And there isn't even a question about price at that point.
They trust you.
You've demonstrated the value by showing them right away that you don't want. First of all, I don't want to go charge you to go reset a GFI.
Same.
I don't want
got stuff to do. Yep, I'm with you.
I've got stuff to do, and if whatever it is, even if it was a good amount of money for a service call, like a flat, that the way I look at my company from a standpoint of operating costs. That is like, unless I went there and did something else, even if I collected $200 to reset or replace the GFI, that time slot on that calendar between going there, building value, talking to the customer, and leaving, say it took 3 hours to do that, just say it did.
Not worth it.
Say you get to talking about the dog or whatever.
Yeah.
$200 over 3 hours is not going to cover operating costs.
Nope.
So why am I even going to, if I want to help the person and it's not about the money, just help the person.
That's right. Yeah,
Don't worry about it.
We had a client reach out recently, and we've done a lot of work for this client. And that's another thing, too, is once you've developed your clientele, you're their resource. And so we had a client reach out and say, hey, microwave's tripping the breaker. could you come over and diagnose it? And I said, well, before we do that, why don't you grab an extension cord and plug that microwave into another receptacle?
Yep.
And see if that happens with another breaker. And he did, and he was like, that did happen. I said, it's your microwave. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just...
Yeah, I know.
We are their team.
Yeah.
And so that doesn't mean I have to charge them every time they talk to me. It doesn't mean I'm trying to take advantage of them. It means that because they're going to call me back when they're ready for the next project. And yeah.
And if they're a customer, just to be clear, I've done this too. I want to talk about the other side of it, which is I've had customers who have never, I've given them a ton of information over the course of 3 months. And hey guys, I'm just going to say it. It's typically somebody with an engineering degree.
Period.
Okay. They know everything.
Except how to do the work.
Say it with love. But anyway, walking them through it. I find myself having 3 or 4 conversations with that person over the course of 6 months or whatever.
Yeah.
At some point in time, I do have that conversation. Like, okay, so I just want to let you know, Mr. So-and-so or Mrs. So-and-so.
Yeah.
I've helped you through a few situations. I'm more than happy that I've been able to help you through a few situations. But if you're going to need any more help, you might need to call me to go to your house to do the work.
That's right. And that's a great, and that also engenders trust.
Yeah.
They see that you as an adult and a business owner are setting your own boundaries and saying, hey, look, I'm willing to help.
Yeah.
But we are a company.
Exactly. Yeah, we've got things we got to do. We got other people to serve. I want to serve you as best as I can, but I feel like, at this point, it's probably best if I come there.
Yep, totally.
How much is that going to cost? Okay.
And that might not be and that's another thing we're diving into this more and more, is just like our prices, where our prices are set. And, some folks that reach out, they will ask right up front. And look, everybody's on a budget, and that is how life works.
Right.
So people will go fishing. They'll reach out and they'll say, hey, what's your price? What are your prices? And, we'll always say we typically price per project, per item, not per hour, but here's our hourly rate. And the people who don't get back to you, awesome.
Yep.
Because they weren't going to work with you anyway, and that's fine.
Knowing your customers and who you can work with is so important. And, we work with a lot of contractors. I will say that, I'd say a good, at this point, 60% of my customer base is contractor based.
Okay.
Where they're hiring us. So here's the thing, they get a different rate than the public gets because they need to mark that price up.
Okay.
Right. So we're exchanging our what we would like to make on a service rate for secured work.
Correct.
On the counter. Now, we all know there's no shortage of work.
Right.
Right. But the bottom line is, if there's a market correction, you want to be geared up with those people that will secure you work.
Totally.
And they have. I mean, our area is kind of insulated for market correction, but we've also got more people moving into our state from out of state. So we're becoming very transient in the sense like Florida is transient.
Yeah.
To where you don't actually know if that income is there or not anymore.
Right.
They might have moved here on retirement and now they're on fixed.
Yeah.
So we want to have that security. I'm getting to what I was saying is with those contractors, I tell them flat out, anytime there's a discrepancy about cost, I always say the same thing. Okay, it costs this much for my company to operate for the day. If everything goes well on your project based off of a fixed cost that I'm giving you, which means I'm responsible for everything that goes wrong without charging you more, okay? If it costs me this much to do business, and our best case scenario is a 10% return, that equals this.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they're like, what? That's all you're going to make.
Yeah.
That's all we're going to make. If everything goes well, 10% the company will make.
Yeah.
We get paid, of course, but 10%.
Right.
And they're just like, that's way too low. It should be more than that. I was like, well, you wouldn't pay me more. I've asked you.
Right. Yeah.
So, okay. But even knowing those, Mike Holt talks about this a lot. When you're coming up with your company's pricing, I mean, you have to know what things cost.
Right.
Insurances, your salary, your company should make money, so your company's an employee.
That's right. Your company's the other partner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It has to make money. It has to be paid every day.
That's right.
I look at the company getting paid as not profit.
Yeah.
I look at the company as being paid as an employee.
Yeah.
And then after the company's paid, I'm paid, the employees are paid. That's profit.
That's right.
Which is where that 10% comes from.
Right. I love that. I love the way you think about that. We're constantly trying to dial that into. It's like
it's hard.
It's a hard thing to do.
Materials are making it so hard.
Yeah, it's true. And also, like, something that Josh and we started meeting with a mentor that we are really thankful to have the opportunity to do so. He's a local business owner, and he's just a wealth of knowledge. And the way that he was describing, like, when you're first starting your business and you're setting your prices, it's all about the lens through which you see yourself. And
right.
When you're first starting, your prices are just so low because you just don't see yourself yet as an equal to these larger companies. It's like, well, I'm just getting started, just figuring it out. And it's like, well, it's not necessarily about that. It's about you succeeding as an organization. And if you want to grow, you've got to budget for growth. And the only way to budget for growth is for your prices to be where they need to be to cover your operating costs daily.
Yep.
And that's where your prices have to be, period. And so if somebody can't fit within that as a client, they're not the client for you.
Right.
And that's it.
Well, I think when you serve others in the way that is authentic and you really genuinely care, your customers will either grow with you or you'll outgrow that customer base.
Yeah.
That's what happens, But like here we've got service companies that are charging, I'm not exaggerating, almost $600 to hang a ceiling fan.
Wow.
They're charging that because of their size.
Yeah, right.
And, hey, you know what? Like, they're not looking for everybody to say yes.
Right.
They're looking for 1 out of 10 to say yes to a $600 ceiling
That's right.
fan.
That's right.
That's where they're at in their scale.
Yep.
And this is an interesting conversation I've been having with myself a lot. Do I want to scale? And you've talked about one of my favorite podcast episodes that you have has been talking about that challenge as a business owner of like, you get rid of your freedom that you might have to scale. You bring people in. Is it necessary? Is it not necessary? I just went through it. I mean, I went out and bought a van and stocked it and got a guy, and it lasted 5 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
now I'm like, I'm not defeated by it, but I'm like, we didn't make any money by doing it.
Yeah.
Just to be clear.
Yeah.
We broke even at best.
Yeah.
And if I found the right person to do it, you start this now you've created this momentum.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not really encouraged by that momentum in a way that's like, yeah, this is going to be great.
Yeah.
The other freedom is not doing it, and it's just you and maybe a helper.
Right.
Like I'm at now.
Yeah.
And that's cool because that's manageable. And if I want to take a day off and I want to pay my helper, that's a benefit. Hey, man, when I take a day off, you get paid, whatever.
Right.
You can do that. You can't really do that when you've got 5 trucks on the road.
You can't. No, it all has to be clicking. Yeah, we're there right now. We're trying to figure it out. And it's nice talking about this with you because it's just on our mind nonstop. It's like, how do you grow? What do you do? Why do you grow? I think for us, it's like we've always talked about staying small because we love our freedom. The whole point of starting the company was, number one, to create our own culture, our own work culture where we get to do things like this, like a podcast if we want to.
Yeah, it's so cool that you do that.
It's fun.
Yeah.
It's like it just is the marketing arm of what we do, and it just is a fun way to learn and grow by talking to people like you. But, that we're providing ourselves a little bit of that freedom by staying small. However, with the growth of this show and with the growth of our company, the phone's ringing more than it's ever rang before, and we're getting more emails than we can keep up with. It's like, when we first started, the thought was we don't necessarily want to grow too quickly because it's going to cause problems that we're going to need solutions to. And now we're at this point where it's like maybe some form of growth would be the solution to some of the problems we're already keeping up. It feels feels a lot like there's with the company with Lumen Brothers and Modern Electrician. It feels like there are 2 vehicles in drive moving down a highway, and we're running to catch up to them because it's like they're moving. And so it's like, what do you do? How do you steer it? What's the smartest way forward? So we're in the process of figuring all that stuff out.
I mean, for us, I've been getting to think about it more and more. And, I want to get that van. I want to get someone else in that van, of course. But, I also would, really like to be able to focus exclusively on training this apprentice that we have, and then like create like a process, that really gets him to be able to take the next guy, and then we do it, but it would be like organic growth as opposed to do forced.
Yeah.
I do think though that there is something to be said about, being in our age bracket and being able to identify, okay, what do I need?
Yeah.
What do I need to be able to safely retire? I could still work, but safely retire at this age. Mm-hmm. And then figure out at that company size, how many years is it going to take doing nothing different to get that?
Yeah.
And for me, I found that if I just took all company earnings, didn't scale it, and made that as like my retirement or whatever, it's like 15 years.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
To comfortably stop. Like, I'm going to take a little service call here, or maybe I'm going to let my apprentice at that time, maybe he's still an electrician, and maybe he wants to become part owner, and he can scale it if he wants.
Sure.
Because at almost 40, it's like, okay, I've got a lot of living left to do, but not a whole lot of like physical living left to do. I know an electrician, like I said, the master that taught me so much. I love him. His name's Ray. His son is his next owner, and or a owner, and I look at him. He's still out there like crushing it, like working hard. I'm not scared of work by any means, but I also know he broke his arm swinging a hammer.
Yeah.
I don't want to be that. I don't want to be that guy. I want to be able to. So you can rush to that retirement, right, by scaling real fast.
Yeah.
And like not having any real core values developed. It's just like forced growth.
Yeah.
Or you can like
organically
know your identity,
yeah.
Start finding it, organically grow, let your customers dictate. It sounds like you guys have your customers already dictating how much you need to grow. But I mean, I think I listened to Dustin Stelzer say the same thing. He was like, I've just gotten to the point where I say it's expensive for me to come out. Well, he doesn't say that, but this is what it costs for me to come out and do a service call.
Yeah, right.
Because I've got so much else going on.
Yeah, sure.
I don't know if he's still in that space, but there was a period of time when I listened to one of his posts that he was saying that,
Yeah. And I mean, that's not a bad place to be, because the people who really want you are going to want you. And, this mentor that we're talking to is talking about how we should really market that our company is owned by two masters.
Yep.
And that at this point, no matter who you call, no matter what you schedule, there's going to be a master owner working on your project.
Yep.
We need to start marketing that a little bit more. But I'm with you. Josh and I just both want that organic, slow growth so that we don't outgrow the clients that we majorly, the clients that have worked with us so far, that we're taking them into consideration. And for us, the biggest consideration is obviously our quality, but like sending somebody in a person's house that like,
me too.
Scares the shit out of me. Like sending a rando into one of our clients' homes. Yeah.
My biggest thing right now is like I don't want to go on Indeed and find somebody.
No.
This person's got to come to my house.
Yeah.
Like they got to know where I'm living.
Yeah.
I got to trust that they're not going to like come to my house and break in and take all my stuff because they don't like me.
Right.
Or whatever.
Sure.
Or I said something on the job site that dudes didn't agree with. Or whatever. Like I don't want to deal with that.
And that's another thing to consider too, is like we need a facility, and that's another thing we've been thinking about too. It's like if we do grow, what's the order in which you set things up, and what's the best way to go about that? Because in our town of Frederick, Maryland, rent prices are so astronomical right now that it's just cost prohibitive. So it's like
Greenville, South Carolina. You'll find it, but it's expensive.
Right on.
Yeah, it is. So I feel you on that, and I think I just. Maybe close with that. I mean, I think I know that no matter what, if we continue to care about our customers, we continue to approach what we do for a living with integrity and an actual passion for it, you can't fail at it.
I agree.
And you'll always have work, You'll never be the stereotypical guy that comes in reeking of whatever and crack hanging out. Like, you just won't. You can't be that because you care.
That's right.
You know,
You're right.
and as long as you do, you can't fail.
I agree with that, man. It does boil down to where are you in your heart and your mind when you wake up in the morning and go about your business. Like, do you want the people around you to succeed? Are you focused on? Are you thinking about that when you get in your truck? You want this to go well. You want that to go. It's all about that mindset. You're right. You will succeed whether the project you're working on succeeds or not. In the long term of your life, you'll be a successful person.
Yeah.
Right on.
Exactly.
Bryan, thanks so much, man. This has been an awesome conversation. I really appreciate you reaching out and wanting to be a part of this.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. And I'm so stoked on what you guys are doing. Please don't stop.
Nah, we're on a train. She's moving, so having a lot of fun with it too. So, yeah, man, I'll let everybody know where they can find you online, and just keep doing what you're doing, man.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Doug.
Yeah, man. Have a great week, and we'll talk soon.
All right, see ya.
All right, brother. See ya.